It was never just a comet. That's the first thing they'll tell you now. In private circles behind sealed conference room doors, with satellite feeds muted and camera lenses covered, they admit it plainly. 3I Atlas, 3I/ATLS, was never a rock wandering through the stars. It was never something that just drifted in. It chose this path. It navigated here. It knew what it was doing. And now, so do we. If you're still watching, subscribe now. You crave more than answers. You seek what lies beyond. Subscribe now and be part of the few who never stop searching. When the James Webb Space Telescope captured its first detailed image, something in the silence of deep space cracked. Scientists stared, not in triumph, but in disbelief, because the image didn't show dust and ice. It didn't show the chaotic, disintegrating tail of a frozen traveler. It showed structure, geometry, lines that shouldn't exist in nature, reflective symmetry, materials that matched no known comet, alloys and composite signatures, and worst of all, heat, controlled heat, not from the sun, from within. At first, the official explanation was conservative, cautious. Anomalous readings, they said. Unusual spectral profiles. But those who understood the numbers knew what they were really saying. This thing isn't natural. It never was. Because natural objects don't perform gravity assists. They don't slingshot through planetary alignments with precise velocity corrections. They don't wait for solar conjunction. The one time when Earth's instruments are temporarily blinded by the sun's glare and then vanish behind it. That sits not randomness. That sits strategy. You don't have to be a physicist to understand what this means. This object entered the solar system on a trajectory so precise, it mirrored the ecliptic plane, the invisible disk where every planet orbits. It coasted in like it was riding on rails, and when it reached the inner system, it danced. A gravity nudge off Venus, a speed boost from Mars, a trajectory bend near Jupiter. No natural body would do that. No comet gets that lucky. This was a course, a flight path. And that means intent. But intent by what? Or by who? For years, we've been shouting into the void. Radio, television, digital pulses, beacons, SETI programs, humming across radio bands for decades, crying, "We are here," into the infinite dark. And most of us, if we're honest, assumed no one was listening. Or if they were, they didn't care. But what if they heard? What if we were noticed? What if 3I/ATAS is the answer? Or worse, the response? The closer it came, the more impossible it became to ignore. Webb caught the thermal profile first. The object wasn't warming evenly like a typical rock under solar heat. It was regulating, dispersing heat internally, like it was powered, alive in a mechanical way. That's not thermal inertia. That's engineering. Some readings showed a gradual increase in output, then a drop, then stability, cycles of energy emission, not random, not reactive, programmed. And then there's the reflectivity. When light hit the object, it didn't scatter. It reflected in a pattern, not like ice, not like metal, like mirrors arranged with purpose, as if the surface was designed to modulate how it appeared, depending on who or what was watching. Radar imaging revealed inconsistencies, no stable outline, no fixed rotation axis. The shape shifted, like it wasn't a single solid object, but a shell, or a housing, or something we weren't meant to identify. That was the tipping point. The moment when the speculation went cold, because that's when people stopped asking if it was real, and started asking why now. Here's what terrifies the ones in charge. This didn't happen in a vacuum. Uma Kournoy in 2017, Borisov in 2019, and now 3I/ATLAS. Each arrival coming faster, each one stranger. The first just passed through, the second acted like a comet. Sort of, but this one behaved like it was here on purpose. Which brings us to the question they're too afraid to put on the record. Is it alone? Because if it's not, if it's one of many, then this isn't a visit, it's a survey. And when you conduct a survey, you don't just come once. You return. You analyze. You plan. What if 3I/ATLS isn't the end of the story? What if it's the beginning? Inside NASA, behind the scenes, they've activated contingency teams, not public-facing scientists, but national security specialists, tactical space command, rapid response intercept units. Missions are being drafted to chase the object, to deploy long-range probes with high-velocity engines. But it's not that simple, because this thing is fast. Too fast. Even our most advanced propulsion systems can't catch up, not without years of prep and billions in funding. And by the time we get there, it may be too late. Which brings us to the window, the brief, terrifying window. Solar conjunction. That's the moment 3I/ATLS disappears behind the sun from Earth's perspective. For weeks, we can't see it, track it, pricking it. It's invisible, perfectly shielded from observation. And the timing, too perfect. That's when it made its final burn, or maneuver, or something else entirely. Some believe that sits when it activated, because now it's gone. Not just out of sight, out of detection. Telescopes can't find it. Sensors show nothing. No radio noise. No gravitational anomaly. It's like it folded space around itself, or slipped between dimensions. A ship going dark, or worse, parking. And if it sits parked, where? That's the nightmare scenario, that it didn't leave. It's just waiting, somewhere beyond our reach. Waiting for us to change, or to fail, or to prove ourselves. And all of this, the maneuvering, the alloys, the thermal cycling, the perfect gravity assists, it points to one terrifying truth. We were meant to see it. This was no accident. This was a test. And how did we do? Governments aren't talking. Publicly, it's still being referred to as an interstellar anomaly. But inside the halls of Aerospace Command, a very different conversation is happening. They're modeling scenarios. First contact, hostile arrival, invasive observation. They're considering whether to arm orbital platforms, whether to weaponize satellites, whether to respond. But how do you respond to something that never spoke? The worst fear isn't war, it's irrelevance. That 3I/ATLS came, measured us, and found us lacking, that we were judged. Not worth talking to, not advanced enough, not intelligent enough, that we weren't even considered a threat. And maybe that's why they didn't contact us, because they don't need to. They sit already here. Because the data suggests one final, horrifying possibility. What if 3I/ATLS didn't just pass through? What if it left something behind? We've detected transient radar signals, micro anomalies in low Earth orbit, flashes that appear and disappear on infrared sweeps, signals that shouldn't exist, too faint, too fast, too deliberate. Probes, maybe, sensors, machines left behind to watch, to monitor how we react, how we evolve. It's possible we already failed the test, but there's still time. That's the message some are choosing to believe, that this wasn't the end or the beginning, but the invitation to grow, to unite, to stop fighting each other, and start thinking as one species, under one sky, because whether it was a probe, or a scout, or a messenger, it delivered the same verdict: we are seen. And when you are seen, truly seen, you can no longer hide behind ignorance. So what happens now? We build, we prepare, not for war, but for contact, or return. We strengthen deep space surveillance. We map the heavens with new eyes. We rethink everything we thought we knew about life, about the stars, about ourselves. Because if 3I/ATLS was real, and it was, then so is the thing we fear most, that we're not the apex species, that there are civilizations older, greater, more capable, watching us, studying us, waiting. And maybe they'll come back, maybe not. But the moment we saw the impossible gleam of that object through the lens of the James Webb Telescope, the universe got a little smaller and a lot more complicated. Because now we know the truth. We are not alone. And we never were. So here we are, months after the image, weeks after the silence, And the question still pulses in every scientific journal, every intelligence briefing, every quiet conversation beneath classified ceilings. What does it want? That's what no one can answer. Not definitively, not publicly, but behind closed doors, certain theories have begun to take shape. The kind that don't belong in peer-reviewed papers. The kind whispered at 2 a.m. by analysts staring at data they don't understand. Not because the math doesn't work, but because it does too well, too precisely. There's growing belief among senior researchers that 3I Atlas wasn't just navigating, it was mapping, not the planets. Not our orbit. Us. Observatories. Military satellites. Long-range radar facilities. The object made no obvious turns, no aggressive moves, but the gravitational assists it used just happened, coincidentally, to take it within range of every major terrestrial surveillance system we have. It passed through our blind spots and emerged with a clearer picture of us than we likely have of it. We're calling it a comet, because we don't know what else to call it. But it didn't behave like a comet. It behaved like a reconnaissance vehicle. A scout. And scouts don't travel light years without a reason. If that's true, it changes the entire playbook. This wasn't just an exploratory mission. It may have been an intelligence-gathering operation. Not hostile. At least not yet. But clinical, efficient, cold. Let's talk about one of the most disturbing theories rising among aerospace defense circles, cultural recon. The idea that Atlas wasn't scanning for biology or mineral composition, it was looking at civilization, infrastructure, power generation, satellite architecture, internet traffic, energy consumption, artificial intelligence signatures, nuclear readiness, our capabilities, our limits, our fault lines. This theory suggests something brutal, that Atlas didn't just see Earth, it studied how to break it. Let that sit for a moment. Imagine an intelligence 1,000,000 years older than us. One that's seen thousands of worlds rise and fall, studying our planet the way we examine microbes under glass. Not maliciously, just clinically, measuring whether we're worth partnering with or pruning. And if that's true, then the terrifying possibility isn't that we've been contacted. It's that we've been assessed. There's chatter, unverified but persistent, that a second anomaly was detected during Atlas's solar conjunction. Not visible, not tangible, but inferred. Gravitational patterns that suggest another mass, something trailing Atlas, or maybe arriving after it. A relay, a responder, a retrieval unit. Nobody's confirming it, but the calculations are being run, quietly, constantly. Meanwhile, astronomers have been combing through old data archives, wondering what else we've missed, what else we failed to detect. Not because we weren't looking, but because we weren't ready to recognize. How many other objects have slipped past our awareness, masked by clever geometry or cleverer technology? If this was a scouting mission, we may already be in its database. Our location, our physics, our broadcast profile. Every artificial radio wave we've ever leaked into space has become part of our fingerprint. Now imagine we're not the only ones in that system. Let's pivot, because another theory, equally plausible, equally dangerous, isn't one of threat, but one of invitation. A galactic breadcrumb, a machine sent not to assess, but to awaken. There's historical precedent in our own behavior. We send Voyager with gold records, pulsars as celestial return addresses, a map of who and where we are. Maybe Atlas is their version of Voyager. Except they didn't send music. They sent silence. They sent movement, precision, a riddle. And we have to solve it. What if Atlas is the cosmic equivalent of a knock? Not a message. A prompt. Something designed not to communicate to us, but to see how we communicate about it. A test of cognition, pattern recognition, cooperation. If that's true, then the real test isn't the object. It's us, how we respond. Do we panic? Do we fight? Do we conceal the truth? Or do we rise to the occasion and admit as a species that we are no longer alone? Some spacefaring nations have taken drastic internal steps, independent of one another, yet eerily synchronized. The formation of extraterrestrial contact committees, the creation of off-Earth signal contingency plans, reallocation of dark-budget aerospace projects toward rapid launch interceptors. China, for instance, is rumored to have repurposed one of its military quantum satellites for deep space listening, something not built for communication, but for decryption. Because what if we've already received a message and just don't recognize it as one? A pulse in gravity, a shift in light, a pattern in background radiation. If you're dealing with an intelligence unimaginably older than your own, you don't get messages in words. You get them in laws of nature. In the months following Atlas's passage, astrophysicists began noticing micro-fluctuations in neutrino emissions across multiple observatories, too random for natural decay, too patterned for statistical noise. The signal doesn't repeat, but it cycles. What does that mean? We don't know, but some believe it's not what we're receiving that matters, but how we respond. Let's talk worst-case scenario, because someone always has to. There is a growing concern that Atlas may be the first in a sequence, not a scout, not an invitation, but a herald, that what comes next is not observation, but arrival. You don't send a probe through a system unless you're considering what it would take to enter it. And our system is now mapped, not just in space, but in strategy. Atlas didn't just learn our planet's geography. It learned our patterns, how we react, how we coordinate, how we fail to coordinate. It studied our response time. So the question becomes, why haven't they returned? Maybe they're waiting to see how we change. Maybe they're giving us time to prepare, not for them, but for ourselves. Because no matter how advanced a civilization is, diplomacy still requires parity, mutual respect, a shared table, and we're not there yet. But we could be. That's why new global policies are forming. The idea of planetary neutrality, a shared global response force, not for defense, but for contact. Interstellar protocols being drafted not by generals, but by scientists and ethicists. A council not of war, but of witnesses. Even the Vatican. Yes, the Vatican has begun studying the theological implications of contact. A secret conference of religious leaders met to discuss how major world religions might respond to proof of extraterrestrial intelligence, not to collapse belief, but to expand it. Because contact doesn't just change physics, it changes everything. Our place in the universe, our myths, our fears, our future. And still, silence. No follow-up object. No broadcast. No visual confirmation of another vessel. But something lingers. You hear it in the way astronomers talk now. The way their voices trail off when talking about the cosmos, like they're expecting something. Like every clean scan is a lie waiting to break. Maybe that sips the point. Maybe 3i Atlas was never meant to speak. Maybe its silence was the message. We are being watched. And now we are watching back. For the first time in human history, we're not looking at the stars in wonder. We're looking in recognition. Because something out there sent a scout. It saw us, measured us, and whether it found us worthy or not, we may be given the chance to find out. If we sit real lucky. If we sit ready. If we have the courage to look at the sky and not just ask what's out there, but ask who we are and whether we're prepared to meet whatever watches from the dark. Because Atlas didn't come to destroy. It came to reveal. And the next revelation may be closer than we think. For the first time in human history, Earth is quiet. Not in sound, but in intention. The hum of satellites, the chatter of networks, the pulse of civilization still thunders forward, but there's a hush beneath it all. A sense that something is listening, watching, judging. 3i Atlas didn't fire a beam. It didn't land. It didn't break our atmosphere, or even cast a shadow across our clouds. It did something far more unnerving. It arrived with purpose, moved with intelligence, and then left, leaving behind the undeniable possibility that it was never just a rock, that it was never alone, that it may have been the first piece in something staggeringly larger than we can understand. And now all of humanity sits on the edge of a realization it cannot explain, cannot verify, but cannot ignore. We've been seen.